You might think that 2024 was one of the craziest years for assassination attempts, with two scarily close tries on the then former US President Donald Trump. But there was one year that was even more insane. Like a level out of Hitman, there were 4 attempts on a range of high-profile targets. For this, we must go back in time, to the year of the first London Marathon, the year when Lady Di and Prince Charles were wed, and the year when China became the first country to reach a population of 1 billion people. At the same time, France abolished the death penalty, the first Indiana Jones film was released, and the famous plumber Mario debuted in the arcade game Donkey Kong. This year, you may have already guessed, was 1981. Our list of notable assassination attempts begins at 2:27 p.m. on the 30th of March. Ronald Reagan, the freshly inaugurated president of the free world, was walking to a limousine after talking at a Hilton hotel in Washington, D.C. A revolver was shot at Reagan, with a bullet ricocheting off the side of the limousine and impacting him in the left arm, causing a rib to break, a lung to puncture, and serious internal bleeding. He arrived at hospital in a life-threatening condition before being stabilized and undergoing surgery. He was released almost 2 weeks later on the 11th of April. 3 other men were also injured in the attack, with one, James Brady, sadly passing away 33 years later as a result of his injuries. Their attacker was John Hinckley Jr., who was found not guilty by reason of insanity. His motive for the attack? He believed it would impress Jodie Foster, who he had developed an obsession with after seeing the film Taxi Driver. The next assassination attempt was on the 13th of May in St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. Pope John Paul II was shot twice as he entered the square in an open-top popemobile. One bullet hit his torso, narrowly missing critical organs, and the other his index finger. The attacker? Mehmet Ali Agca, a Turkish hitman. He had been imprisoned for an earlier murder of a journalist before escaping and illegally travelling to the Vatican City. The motives for his attack are uncertain. However, the most popular and widespread theory was that the orders came from Moscow and the KGB, as the Pope was supportive of Poland's Solidarity movement, which was detrimental to the strength of the Eastern Bloc. Almost immediately after the attack, Agca was caught by security staff, a nun, and other shocked bystanders. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in Italy. The Pope forgave Agca for the attack, and 19 years later, at the Pope's request, was pardoned by the Italian president. Agca was deported back to Turkey, where his sentence continued. He was briefly released in 2006 before the Turkish court ruled that the time served in Italy didn't count towards his Turkish sentence, and so he was returned to prison until 2010. Agca and the Pope became friends during this time, and in 2005, Agca wrote letters to the Pope wishing him well with his illness. 2 years after this, he converted to Roman Catholicism, and in 2014, Agca returned to the Vatican City to lay white roses on the tomb of the recently canonized Pope. At the same time, he asked to meet Pope Francis, but that request was unsurprisingly denied. The next assassination attempt took place on the 13th of June in England during the annual Trooping the Colour ceremony. Marcus Sargent fired 6 blank shots at the Queen, startling her horse but doing no damage. He was quickly pulled over the barricade and arrested. He was tried for treason and sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, he was released after serving just 3. Before the event, he sent a warning letter to the Queen, stating, "Your Majesty, don't go to the Trooping the Colour ceremony because there is an assassin set up to kill you, waiting just outside the palace." This letter, however, didn't arrive until 3 days after the ceremony. So what was this attacker's motive? He had seen the global recognition gained by John Lennon's killer in December 1980, and from the perpetrators of the attacks on Ronald Reagan and the Pope. He was quoted as saying, "I wanted to be famous, I wanted to be somebody." Our last assassination attempt came a few months later, on October 14th. This one occurred on the other side of the world, in little old New Zealand. While the location was vastly different, the target was the same. The royal family were touring and were set to visit the Otago Museum in Dunedin. The perpetrator, Christopher John Lewis, knew their whereabouts, so hid in a toilet cubicle of a nearby building. As the Queen exited a car, he fired a rifle through a window. Once again, no one was injured, but a loud crack was heard by bystanders. A report on the incident found that Lewis had neither the right vantage point nor a properly powerful enough rifle to successfully complete the attack. 8 days after the attack, Lewis was arrested. As he was read his charges, he was disappointed to not be charged with treason. The real reason he got off lightly was that the police covered up the story as they were concerned it would create a negative image of New Zealand and prevent future royal visits. It wasn't until 2018 when the real details of the incident were finally disclosed. Despite his initial failures, Lewis continued to target the royal family. In 1983, when Charles, Diana, and their young son William toured, Lewis tried unsuccessfully to escape from his psychiatric ward. During the next royal tour, the police were however more prepared and sent him to Great Barrier Island to keep him far away from the touring royals. And that concludes our list. While all of these attempts were fortunately unsuccessful, they did manage to change the course of history forever. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more odd but honest content.